This mountain was known to the ancient Canaanites as the place where Baal's palace was located. Mount Zaphon is today, it's called Jebel al-Aqra. It's on the border between Turkey and Syria on the Mediterranean coast. Pretty impressive. It's about 5,800 feet, more than a mile tall. It was the home of not just Baal, but the god who really should be identified with Baal for the other cultures around it. To the north, in what is now Turkey, you had the Hurrians and you had the Hittites. To the Hittites, this mountain was holy to their storm god Tarhun. To the Hurrians, this mountain was sacred to their god Teshub. Same god, different names. It was also sacred to the Greeks. They called it Mount Kasios. And they worshipped a god there named Zeus Kasios. Baal was Zeus. Was also Jupiter. Jupiter Cassius. In fact, they found an amulet dedicated to Jupiter Cassius from the 4th century AD in Germany. This god Baal was a big problem because he was around for a long time. Came to Egypt at the same time as the Israelites, about 1750 BC, was still causing problems in the Holy Land in Jesus' day. Also known to the Amorites as the god Amuru. Even the Sumerians knew this god. They called him Ishkur. This was a prominent deity. Interestingly, like Yahweh in the Old Testament, he was described as a storm god, a rider in the clouds. And as I said last night, a lot of contemporary scholars, people living today, scholars, think that we Christians are fools because we don't realize that we're actually worshiping a Canaanite god. That's the PSYOP. The stories that the ancients got from these deities that had rebelled against Yahweh was a lie. But they recorded those lies as their mythology, their stories. And now the last 150 years, modern scholars have found these tablets, translated the tablets, and come to the conclusion that the Hebrews stole their religion from the Sumerians and the Canaanites. Like I said, it's like getting the same story from two different news networks, Fox or Al Jazeera. And who are you going to trust? Mount Zaphon was so important in this culture, in ancient Israel. And in the Old Testament, you see it over and over again, the trouble that Elijah had with the prophets of Baal. They were such a problem that the word for this mountain, Zaphon, actually entered the Hebrew language as the word for the compass point north, because that's where their mountain was located. It was in the north of what is now Syria, to the north of Israel. So every time you say north in Hebrew, Zaphon, you're saying the name of Baal's holy mountain. All right, there's a picture of Mount Zaphon. And now let's look at Isaiah 14, because this is where the stuff really starts getting interesting. Isaiah 14, in the King James, is an example of when you substitute the proper name Zaphon, the name of the mountain, for north in the Bible, the passages take on a very surprising new meaning. In the King James, Isaiah 14, verses 12 and 13, "How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nations? For thou hast said in thine heart, I will ascend into heaven, I will exalt my throne above the stars of God." And the stars in the Old Testament, meaning the angels of God, those who remain faithful. The key verse, "I will sit also upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north." Mount of the congregation, mount of the assembly, holy mountain. That's what we're talking about here. Lucifer wanting to establish his mount of the congregation in the sides of the north. Have you ever wondered what sides of the north actually means? Let's look at some other translations here where they actually substitute the word, the proper name, Zaphon, for north. In the NIV, that verse reads, "I will sit enthroned on the mount of assembly on the utmost heights of Mount Zaphon," Baal's holy mountain. The New English Translation, the Net Bible, "I will rule on the Mount of Assembly on the remote slopes of Zaphon. There are a number of English translations where the translators recognize what's going on here. This is Lucifer. In the Hebrew, named Helel ben Shakar, which means light bringer or shining one, son of the dawn. Again, we've got that motif of the glowing, shining, divine being, an angel of light, wanting to establish his holy mountain as supreme in the cosmos. Which mountain? Mount Zaphon, Baal's holy mountain.